Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Upon learning of her divorce, the woman went on vacation. When she returned, she was stunned to see her smiling mother-in-law in her apartment and uninvited guests in the kitchen. Dolores was a modern, confident, smart, and self-sufficient woman. She had perceived herself this way for most of her life, and her surroundings confirmed this perception. She had always approached her family life consciously. She knew she wanted to create a proper family, to later have 1 or 2 children with a loved and respected person with whom she shared mutual love. Her marriage to Diego lasted 5 years and went through many trials, including the well-known crises of family life. In the first year after their wedding, they got used to each other. Instead of quick snacks at a cafe, they now had full dinners together, which needed to be prepared. Dolores, not particularly good at cooking, began learning after the wedding. Diego showed patience, trying to express satisfaction even when the food left much to be desired. They learned to share space, adapting to each other's presence. Gradually, romance gave way to everyday life. This crisis they overcame. Dolores' cooking skills improved, they set a schedule for watching TV shows, and they got a spacious double bed for more comfort. At the time, Dolores worked as an operator at a 24-hour gas station, and her absences for a few days became a subject of jokes among friends. Diego explained with understanding, "That's why Dolores and I have such harmony. We live every other day without getting tired of each other." The next crisis in their marriage came 3 years later. Losing interest in each other, they risked parting ways. But Dolores decided to act. She changed her hairstyle, lost weight, learned makeup, and organized a cruise. On the first day on deck, Diego was surprised to see a beautiful blonde before him, and only a moment later did he realize that it was his wife, smiling at him. Sucking in his stomach, which, frankly, had been causing him some distress lately, Diego hesitantly glanced around and smiled back. The blonde took off her sunglasses and turned out to be his lawful wife. In short, the enemy was saved. For a couple more years, Dolores was happy with Diego, as we often are with familiar and close people. He wasn't a romantic hero, living on the edge for his beloved and dreaming only of one thing, dying with his chosen one's name on his lips. He wanted to live quietly next to this chosen one. He was a simple and ordinary person, loving hearty and tasty meals, and at the same time, not wanting to pay attention to his growing sides, loving to lie on the sofa with the TV remote in hand, and believing that the best way to keep the romance in a relationship alive was to drink beer together and go to bed early. When did that barely noticeable, web-like crack appear between them, which gradually widened and finally turned into a chasm? Where did all her hopes and plans fall? Who knows? Outwardly, nothing had changed. They still came home, ate, drank, changed clothes, and slept, then got up, left, and upon returning, ate and slept again, and that was all. Dolores read all the books on family psychology. Experts unanimously emphasized the importance of maintaining emotional contact. But in order to maintain something, you need to have it. Perhaps there was no such contact with Diego at all. Frankly speaking, she couldn't remember her heart joyfully racing or freezing at the thought of him, and Diego had never once blushed with happiness while handing her the obligatory bouquet on her birthday and Women's Day. Although, it must be said, their first meeting happened under quite amusing circumstances, and it could even be considered romantic. They met at the city festival. Dolores had been living in this city for 3 years, and a significant portion of that time had been spent learning how to walk in high heels. Born in a village and living there until she was 20, Dolores didn't possess this skill. Moreover, having spent her entire childhood and adolescence running around in sneakers, flip-flops, galoshes, or sometimes barefoot, she had clearly disturbed her center of gravity or balance, which should have kept her steady on a thin stiletto. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't walk confidently in heels for a long time, at least half the height of her intended goal. She had to learn, no matter what. In her eyes, the ability to walk in high heels was a sign of civilization, along with the habit of brushing teeth, drinking bitter coffee with a blissful expression on her face, and confidently typing on a computer keyboard. Finally, after months of practice, she was ready to conquer the world. That festive evening, she triumphantly strode through the boulevards and squares in beautiful suede shoes with insanely high heels. Dolores felt much taller, slimmer, more beautiful, and, most importantly, about 300% more urban than usual. "It's already late, we should head home," her dorm friends, by the way, timidly wearing sneakers, soon declared. Honestly, her legs ached, her right heel was starting to hurt, but Dolores decided to crown her triumph with a visit to the fireworks on the waterfront. The girl, resolutely pulling herself together, tried to maintain her confidence and said, "Well, go ahead, I'll stay and walk a bit more." However, the walk ended badly. Her legs, trembling from fatigue, were put to the test. The heel broke with a terrible snap, and Dolores, feeling a sharp pain in her ankle, sank onto the nearest bench. Her foot started to swell noticeably. The phone, drained from the photo sessions in the city landscapes, was of no help. Dolores helplessly looked around. Just then, a polite male voice was heard. "Excuse me, may I help you?" "You can and you must." Dolores responded, gasping from the pain. A man was standing not far away. "There's a trauma point around the corner, but," he added. "But what?" Dolores cautiously asked, already imagining how he would carry her into the doctor's office. However, reality turned out differently. The embarrassed man muttered, "Sweet girl, I would love to carry you to the trauma center, but I just can't lift you," which caused Dolores to smile unexpectedly. Introducing himself as Diego, the man offered his help in the form of support. He skillfully bandaged Dolores' foot with his scarf and helped her get to the trauma center. After leaving the doctor's office, Dolores saw Diego sitting on a chair by the door. "How are you, Dolores?" he asked shyly. "I'm fine, I'll live," she replied optimistically. "Dolores, maybe we should live together?" Diego suddenly suggested, blushing. That's how they met, became interested in each other, and got married. Diego, a native city dweller, was a construction engineer with a small but cozy apartment. Although he didn't stand out with perfect features or a physique, he had kind brown eyes and a sincere smile, accepting himself as he was. Dolores, coming from a village, realistically assessed her prospects: a high school diploma, a year of work as a secretary, and 3 years of university in accounting. That was very little to aim for anything more, even considering her long legs and cute face. And her upbringing, given to her by Dolores' grandmother, an orphan, was completely outdated, full of rules, restrictions, and moral barriers that would never have allowed her to use those legs and face for selfish purposes, to her great regret. Therefore, Dolores lived on a bird's rights in a student dorm, worked as a cashier in a tiny store, and wondered whether it was possible to glue a hole in her winter boots. So when she heard Dolores, "I love you, marry me," she didn't think for long. And now, after 5 years of this life, it suddenly became clear to her that the person next to her was not the one, that she was unbearably bored. Diego was caring, compliant, almost always agreeing with her, and sometimes it seemed that his main concern was whether she had put on warm tights under her jeans. "Diego, you're like my grandmother." Seriously, Dolores defended herself from her husband's overprotection. "I feel like I married a nanny. Where's the passion, the wildness, the jealousy?" "Dolores, you knew you weren't marrying a Casanova," Diego laughed. "As for passion, I passionately wish you wouldn't freeze standing at the bus stop. That's all. You know, I don't even understand what's wrong with me," she shared with her closest friend, Mariana. "I'm bored, you know? Even during intimacy, I feel like he's tucking in a blanket and making sure I don't catch a draft. Dolores, you're something else. I'm sorry, but I think you're just spoiled. Your Diego can't get enough of you, and you're being fussy. I don't want him breathing on me." "Well, I do, but not like that," Dolores grumbled. Well, watch out, you'll lose him," Mariana smirked. Soon, she met a man who was the complete opposite of Diego. Santiago was decisive, impulsive, passionate, couldn't stand small talk, and on the very first evening, he invited her to visit him. Without thinking, with her heart pounding, she agreed and nervously entered his apartment. He pounced on her immediately in the hallway, and she broke free, running down the stairs. Now that's passion, Dolores decided, and left her phone with calls from Santiago in plain sight. Dolores, answer, please, Diego asked after the phone lit up for the 5th time in a row with an incoming call. Aren't you curious who it is? Dolores asked challengingly. Well, I assume that if it concerns me, you'll tell me, Diego shrugged. I don't know, Dolores replied in a rather unpleasant tone. Well, it was clear. She didn't want to live with Diego anymore. That meant divorce. What would happen to her if she ended up alone? In a couple of years, she'd be 30, no children. From everything that could have made her life completely different, bright, and exciting, as she had always dreamed she had rejected it 5 years ago. True, there was the apartment, the one where she and Diego had lived. And knowing Diego, it could be assumed that he would leave it to her. But the walls, the floor, and the ceiling wouldn't save her from loneliness, from the feeling that everything was already lost, that she had missed her chance, that she had betrayed herself. What should she do next? Dolores really didn't know. What Dolores knew for sure was what she wouldn't do if she and Diego decided to part ways. She wouldn't sit on the windowsill, sadly watching the raindrops on the glass, and she wouldn't cry looking at their wedding photo, where they are happy, holding hands. She wouldn't sort his shirts, remembering that he wore this one on her birthday, and that one on their anniversary. Back then, she thought of herself as a happy wife, planning to spend her whole life with him. She wouldn't look through the call history to understand when he last called, because she knew it had been too long. No, she would be a different woman if, hypothetically, she became a deserted wife. She would be strong and proud, avoiding scandals and accusations. She would gracefully admit her mistakes and wish Diego happiness. Then she would close the door behind him, take a deep breath, and transform the interior, throw out the old furniture, and finally renovate. She would definitely refresh her wardrobe, buy that white suit she always wanted, without paying attention to the price. Free and proud, she would move forward, and people would whisper, "It's Dolores. How beautiful she is." Her imagination ran wild, and she replayed the scenes of separation in her head many times, until one day Diego said he was leaving. "Dolores, I see you need to be free," he said during their last conversation. "Do you love someone else?" She immediately exclaimed, "No, I don't have anyone. And I don't want to leave you. But if it's easier for you, you can blame me," Diego replied, wiping his face with his hand as if erasing something unpleasant, and left. And there she was, sitting on the damn windowsill, not remembering how she got there, crying so hard that the raindrops, as if mocking her, kept tapping on the glass while she couldn't see them. Diego's shirts hung peacefully in the closet. She had already gone through them and even pressed one of them to her face, although she wasn't quite sure why, since it couldn't still carry the scent of the person she once loved after the wash. But these were Diego's shirts, and the fact that they still hung there, as if nothing had happened, while he would never be with her again, made her deeply sad. The wedding photo, the one Diego once jokingly called a leap into the unknown, had already been taken off the wall several times, mourned over, and then timidly put back. She firmly took the frame off the nail and suddenly had a strong feeling that a hole had formed in the wall because of it, just like the one in her life. She wasn't yet strong or brave enough to look into that emptiness. Let it hang, after all. It's just a photo. Dolores tried to summon courage and heroism, looking at the face of the happy groom and feeling the tears rise in her throat again. As for the phone, here she managed to stick to her principles. She didn't check the call log. Instead, she stared at his number and the attached photo for hours. Catching herself in this self-deception, she angrily turned off the phone, only to check again after a few minutes to see if she had missed a call from Diego. Now, despite her grand plans, she didn't want to throw away the furniture they bought together. She didn't even want to tear down the wallpaper, which, in her opinion, looked quite ridiculous, the one that mimicked worn, peeling boards, which for some reason Diego had liked so much. And that white suit. Well, when you think about it, why did she need it? First of all, she'd have to wash it every other day, and second, Diego was right when he said she looked twice as wide and white as she actually was. Wait, stop, is she really regretting the breakup? No, it can't be. No, of course not. It's just a stupid, girly fear of loneliness, nothing more, and Diego, well, Diego finally did something manly, probably for the first time since the day they met when he pretended to be her crutch. And anyway, she needed to stop thinking about this, stop pitying herself. She had to do what she had imagined so many times, be proud and calm. She had to change her environment so she wouldn't keep bumping into the wreckage of her past life every minute. Right. She needed to leave. On vacation. To finally treat herself to a luxurious life, to distract herself, relax, and then think about what to do next. A few days later, she was already lying on the beach, feeling the warm breeze on her skin, squinting at the soft rays of the setting sun. Dolores. Oh my God. Is it really you? A high female voice expressed astonishment and joy. A large, full woman in a colorful sarong, which made her look even bigger, was staring at Dolores. Her bleached, wet hair stuck out in all directions, and on her nose, as is customary with many vacationers, was a colorful paper sticker to protect the most prominent part of her body from burning. However, even if she wasn't wearing all this beach attire, Dolores would hardly have immediately recognized Margarita, her long-lost school friend. They hadn't seen each other since they graduated from school, and Margarita had fled from their small village to the big world. "Don't recognize me?" the woman asked. "I do, but with great difficulty." "What happened to you, Margarita?" Dolores wanted to say, but of course, she said something else out loud. "Oh, unbelievable, Margarita, I recognized you right away. You haven't changed at all." "You're probably lying," Margarita commented. Arguing with that was pointless. When Margarita left, she was a slim girl with appetizing curves and dark brown locks. Now, the only thing left of the old Margarita was her voice and the habit of tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Well, Dolores, you don't need to try with me," Margarita laughed, adding, "I know everything about myself. Just added 50 kilos. But you look amazing. Good for you." Margarita gave Dolores an approving look. Dolores couldn't help but smile. The efforts they had both made the previous year to get in shape had paid off. They even had a competition to see who could lose weight the fastest. The prize was serious, choosing the location for their next vacation. Diego had worked hard and promised a relaxing time by the river with fishing. Dolores wasn't interested in that, so she bypassed it. "Listen, Margarita, let's go talk, okay? We haven't seen each other in so many years." "Of course. I'll warn my people, and then we'll go," Margarita replied. "Well, yeah," sighed Margarita, "I'm here with a backpack and kids. Can you believe I have 2 already? 2? Wow, good for you. I'm so happy for you," Dolores said, shaking her friend's hand. "You're happy about that? This is no vacation, with 3 boys." Margarita smiled. "Are you talking about your husband?" Dolores laughed. "Yup, about him, the beloved one," Margarita confirmed. Margarita clearly needed to vent. "If it weren't for my persistence, I wouldn't have children. He always said we should wait and save up." "Standard excuses," sighed Margarita. "And how about you? Married, kids?" she asked. "Yes, married," Dolores nodded, deciding not to mention the upcoming changes. "But no kids." "Don't worry, it's not hard," Margarita smirked. "I'll be back soon. Don't go anywhere." Margarita hurried to the other end of the beach. Dolores pondered her husband's words. "I want a son, or better yet, a daughter, or both at once," she remembered his words. "But when? I need to finish my studies and get a job, otherwise I'll just be stuck in the past. And besides, what's the rush? We have our whole life ahead of us. So what? What does it matter, Dolores? I just really want you to have a child for me, kids. This conversation between them came up periodically, but Dolores, feeling like she was stealing something from Diego and from herself, didn't like the subject and would always stop it with a guilty look. Of course, she wanted children, maybe not less than Diego did. But not now, later, eventually, or maybe never. From Diego? After such thoughts, she was horrified by her own corruption, her lack of principles, scared, and forbade herself to think about it. Well, I'm ready. Margarita had managed to change, though, as it turned out, her beach outfit suited her much better than the obviously tight sundress. On her bulky figure, the fabric stretched tightly, outlining unappealing contours. What, fat? She laughed. Well, what can you do? Not everyone can be a model like some. She looked at Dolores from head to toe with admiration. So, shall we go? They found a spot in a small cafe on the promenade and started reminiscing about their youth, then moved on to stories about the last few years. Margarita mostly talked. It turned out that she had married almost immediately after settling in the city, had 2 sons, and lived with her husband in his apartment. Can you believe it? I'm registered there, and the kids are here, and we're living no worse than others, but I still feel like I'm on some kind of bird rights. Because if something happens, who am I there? No one, and no one even calls me by my name. And my mother-in-law is always pushing me, the old bitch, just like she's supposed to. She's jealous of her precious son when it comes to me, doesn't even hide it. She says right to my face that I, the village fool, married her son. Can you believe it? Like I got pregnant to trap him into marriage. Sure, when we got married, I really was already, 5 months pregnant. So what? Everyone does it. But she's been ruining my life for 7 years, can you imagine? And I still cook wrong, it's inedible, and I raised the kids wrong, and the house is a mess, and my husband is forgotten and abandoned. And that son of hers, her beloved, just sits there, quietly, like it's supposed to be that way. Anyway, the classic mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law story. You probably know what they're like, those mother-in-laws. How's yours? Does she torment you much? Mine, as in, my mother-in-law? Dolores asked, not immediately understanding the question. No, I don't have those problems. Beatrice and I have pretty normal, even good, relations. Really? Margarita asked skeptically. How's that? She doesn't call you a village sheep to your face and doesn't stick her nose into the pots? Well, congratulations. Carlos, what are you doing? Margarita, surprisingly nimble for her size, rushed to the other side as one of her kids tried to climb onto the parapet. Her family, both boys and her husband, who was napping on a lounge chair, had settled nearby. Left alone for a moment, Dolores mentally returned to the subject they had just touched on. Her relationship with Beatrice, Diego's mother, was complicated. Of course, like any normal woman who loved her son and wanted him to be happy, Beatrice wasn't thrilled about Dolores as a daughter-in-law. Dolores was the complete opposite of her mother-in-law, and she realized this immediately upon their first meeting. A beautiful woman who, despite her age, kept her posture and her head held high, with stylishly styled short gray hair and just a hint of makeup, Beatrice immediately made a strong impression on Dolores. And when Dolores saw her high-heeled shoes, the narrow skirt that Dolores herself wouldn't have fit into even after a year of strict dieting, and the blouse with a satin bow in front, the future bride felt herself shrink somewhere very far away. The woman spoke in perfectly correct sentences, clearly pronouncing every word, and looked sternly, as if questioning her silently, even though she didn't say it out loud. Well, dear, I see everything now. What made you think you deserve my son? What saved Dolores from fainting was Diego embracing her shoulders, gently whispering in her ear, and kissing her on the forehead. Dolores, don't worry. My mom worked as a teacher for many years, it's just her professional trait. She's kind and cheerful. Meanwhile, Dolores thought, Yeah, sure, I feel just like a bad student in the principal's office. What kind of daughter-in-law am I for such a lady? She probably dreamed of a wife for Diego, a city girl with degrees, languages, and elegant shoes. And I'm just a village dropout in a simple skirt. Oh, how silly it is to think that flashy clothes will help improve communication. There were many utensils on the table, and she knew only the basics. Beatrice turned to Diego and said, "Diego, go get some bread, please." Of course, thought Dolores, a village girl won't go without bread. When Diego left, Beatrice turned to Dolores. "Dolores, you seem to be afraid of me, and I'm afraid of this situation. Let's get rid of our fears together." Dolores looked at her in surprise. Standing before her was a kind, smiling woman. "Sorry for being too formal," Beatrice said softly. "Dolores, I need some time to get used to the changes." Dolores replied. "I understand," though she didn't really understand. She wasn't dealing with a harsh and strict mother-in-law, but rather a real kind fairy. "Don't believe me?" Beatrice asked, reading her thoughts. "Yeah, I wouldn't believe it either. When Diego told me he proposed to you, I had a fit. I told him to choose you or me. But he said, despite everything, he would choose you. My son loves you, and I won't compete with you. Let's declare a truce and start getting used to each other." Dolores sighed with gratitude, trying not to let Beatrice notice. "Mom." Diego's voice came from the living room. "Are you serious? Are you preparing for the visit of an ambassador or something? Why so many utensils? I don't even know what half of them are for." The evening didn't exactly turn out to be the perfect family dinner. Dolores couldn't relax, not believing what she had heard. Diego, on the other hand, was happily poking his fingers in his plate, having fun. Beatrice, struggling to stifle her laughter, tried to look strict. Dolores unexpectedly asked Diego to behave decently, which led to peals of laughter. Despite a successful introduction to her future mother-in-law, Dolores' life wasn't easy. Beatrice was genuinely amazed by the girl's domestic incompetence. "Dolores, I'm sorry, but this won't do. Diego has stomach problems, he needs healthy homemade food. I'll help, but you'll have to learn to cook." Dolores had to learn the culinary arts under the guidance of her mother-in-law. She wasn't a good student, and Beatrice showed a lot of patience. "It's surprising that you're from the village and don't know how to cook," she said. "Yes, that's true," Dolores confirmed. "In the village, children don't stand by the stove with a spatula from the age of 5. I don't know how to salt cabbage or make borscht." "Well, you'll learn," Beatrice smiled. 6 months later, Diego remarked, "Dolores, did Mom stop by? The meatballs are just like hers." And he froze, looking at his wife's satisfied expression. Thanks to Beatrice's tactful guidance, Dolores stopped ruining clothes when washing and learned how to cook. Margarita, having taken the child off the ladder, sat down at the table. "What were you talking about?" "Oh yes, about mother-in-laws. How's your health? Everything all right?" "My whole body aches," Margarita replied. "The therapist keeps telling me to lose weight." Of course, he's right, but how can I lose weight when the medication interferes? "Last year, I had surgery," Margarita continued. "They almost wrecked the house without me. I come back, the place is a total mess, and I can barely move. I asked the kids to do this, do that. Even my husband calls me dear, because there are no clean socks left," Margarita laughed. "Can you imagine? But when I was in the hospital, not a single person came to visit or brought an apple." "What is it?" A light-haired boy, about 7 years old, clearly the older child of Margarita, tugged at her sleeve and, shifting from foot to foot, muttered something under his breath. "To the bathroom? Well, go with your father, my goodness. And it's a men's one." Margarita snapped. "Can you just let me sit quietly for a moment? Where's your dad?" "Dolores, wait, I'll send them to the bathroom, they won't leave me alone." Margarita dragged her son toward the family head, who was still peacefully resting, and Dolores, stirring her drink with a straw, stared thoughtfully at the endless sea horizon. For some reason, new memories from the past floated into her mind. She didn't get sick often, but every time, Diego acted as if she were about to die in terrible agony. At the first signs of a cold, he literally locked her at home, covered her with blankets, filled her with berry juice, fruits, and crossword puzzles, and called every half hour to ask about her temperature. After a few years of living together, Diego's psyche underwent a very serious test. Dolores, how could this happen? Diego was on the verge of tears, and it was clear that, without the doctors and the few smiling women lying and sitting in hospital beds, he would have collapsed to his knees beside her and probably started crying. His lips trembled suspiciously, and he kept blinking frequently. How could this happen, Dolores? Diego, stop it. Why are you complaining? It happened. What can we do? She looked at the doctor embarrassedly. Senor Fernandez, let's go. Your wife needs rest, healthy sleep, and proper nutrition. The fracture is serious, I won't hide that. But everything will be fine, I'm sure. The operation went well, that's the most important thing. Don't torture yourself like this. The elderly doctor shook his head, evidently thinking that Diego was suffering much more than Dolores at that moment. Diego was running around like crazy between work, home, and the hospital where Dolores was recovering from a complicated leg fracture after a fall on an icy staircase. According to Diego's accounts, he believed she was starving and that her main and only task right now was to endlessly eat fruits, steamed meatballs, yogurts, and sandwiches with caviar. Well, Dolores, your husband is really a gem, said the women from the hospital room, happily helping Dolores destroy the food packages Diego had sent. Can you believe it? Every day he runs around, calls 5 times, and even stands outside the window for half an hour while you take your sweet time to show up. Are you newlyweds or what? Newlyweds? Dolores laughed. We've been together for 4 years already. After her discharge from the hospital, Diego dedicated himself entirely to Dolores and her healing leg. He cooked, took care of the house, took her out for walks, drove her to treatments, and when he wasn't busy with work and endless responsibilities, he just sat next to her and held her hand. Listen, Diego, did you get buff while carrying me around? She said, casually wrapping her arms around his neck. Well, Dolores, how could I not? I'm carrying my most precious treasure, not just anything, Diego muttered. For some reason, she remembered his words clearly at that moment. Can you imagine? Margarita returned from her family patrol for the umpteenth time. They can't even go to the bathroom without me. I'm always running after them or with them. Do you believe it? I don't even have time to watch TV. Reading a book? Forget about it. By the way, you got your degree, right? Accountant? Good for you. I never finished anything. First, I was pregnant, then I gave birth, sent the kid to daycare, and then I was pregnant again. Who's got time for an education with no free time? Look, I was going to chat with a friend, but see, Margarita showed Dolores her phone. My mother-in-law is calling. She won't leave me alone. Better answer. Hello. Yes, everything's fine. Margarita sat aside while Dolores continued stirring her drink. Dolores, have you thought about finishing your studies? Diego asked, 6 months after their wedding. Diego, don't you like having a wife from the village without a degree? Dolores joked. It's something you need, first of all, for your confidence. You don't like working at the gas station, do you? You've got 3 years of economics courses. I'll have to catch up, not much is left in my memory. Plus, studying wasn't easy for me, she shivered. It's not that difficult. You'll have enough time to prepare. I think you're underestimating yourself. You're very smart, with excellent memory. It was decided. Tomorrow, she'd submit her documents to resume her studies. With Diego's help, Dolores passed the exams, returned to university, and earned her degree. "Diego, this diploma is more yours than mine," she laughed. "You need it more. You actually lost weight from happiness." But now, sitting in the cafe, she saw that Diego had supported her every step of the way. He was a tutor, fed her during exams, put up with her outbursts, and worked tirelessly for 2 years without a break. She remembered how Diego started coming home later. "Diego, are you eyeing anyone else? Got yourself someone new?" she teased. "Yeah, I've got someone, another job," he nodded. "They offered an interesting project, need to build a factory. If it works out, they'll pay well. And I'll have enough for a vacation for you, you excellent student." After finishing university, Dolores easily found a job and settled in well. There wasn't a career breakthrough, but she became a reliable specialist. Dolores enjoyed going to work. There, she not only handled accounting and prepared reports, but she also socialized with colleagues, showing off new shoes, suits, or jewelry gifted by Diego. She also showed photos from their recent trips. "Ugh, my mother-in-law will wear me out in no time," Margarita said, sitting down at the table. "Imagine, we left her the cat to feed, clean the litter box. The cat ran out of food, and she insists her pension can't cover our cat. She's asking where to get money. Money, yeah. It's like pouring it into a bottomless pit. Oh, and where's my wallet? Dolores, was I with my wallet?" Margarita exclaimed, patting herself as though she could hide something on her form-fitting sundress. "Oh, where did I put it? Or did I leave it in the bag? Antonio." She called, but Antonio didn't hear. "Dolores, I need to check my wallet. The key to the room's in there too. Funny, in these 5 years, I've never had a time when I didn't have enough to pay for the apartment or groceries. Diego always paid for everything himself, and Dolores had money for new things and beauty salon visits. Over the years, she had been the wife of an engineer, as she sometimes carelessly put it, though this engineer was a highly skilled professional who often received job offers. Diego worked a lot, even on weekends, and the last 2 vacations she had spent without him. "Dolores, honey, you go ahead, I'll stay to work this time," he joked. In this trip, she paid for the tickets and accommodation herself. Although it wasn't the peak season, the amount was still significant. She was surprised when she saw the charge on the bank card. Her own earnings wouldn't have covered the trip, so someone had transferred a decent sum. It was probably Diego's generosity, thinking that after this, she would come back to him. But she wasn't going to give in. She dialed his number. "Hi," she said with a laid-back tone, "how's life for the free man? Found a replacement for me yet?" "Hello, Dolores, glad to hear from you," he replied calmly, as always. "Glad? Why?" "Keep in mind, Diego, we still have to divide the property. I'll give you the books, take the couch too. But what about the apartment? We'll sell it and split the money. I hope you don't mind that half the apartment's worth is mine. Though, I can't stand your wallpaper. If you were a man, you would have replaced them a long time ago," she replied, suppressing the inner voice telling her that nothing in the apartment belonged to her. Diego had worked hard for this apartment. It belonged to him, not you, the freeloading one. "Dolores," Diego's voice sounded tired and muffled, "I never planned to divide anything with you. You don't have to worry about the apartment. If you want, you can stay in it, I'm giving it to you. In the end, I can stay at Mom's. Plus, my grandmother left me a 2-room apartment, so I won't be on the street." "No way. Wow, everything worked out so perfectly." She feigned astonishment, even though she was genuinely surprised. "So, you're giving in? We are so noble, it's almost a royal gesture." "Not royal, just manly," Diego replied. "Anyway, Dolores, the divorce hearing is scheduled for the 30th. When are you coming?" "Don't worry, I'll be there on the 30th, I won't miss the show," she threw into the phone. "Well, then, I'll see you then. Take care of yourself," he muttered. I'll try, for you. She couldn't stop being rude, even though she'd long been feeling the heat of shame on her face. She pressed her hands to her face and sincerely wished to sink through the earth. She hated herself for every word she had just spoken, individually and together. Everything she had reconsidered in the past couple of hours under the influence of Margarita's words washed over her like a fresh, cool downpour on a dusty, suffocating city, washing away all the dirt and filth. Diego, kind, smart, noble, humble. And to scold him, that's like scolding herself. If it's boring with him, then it's boring with herself. Because it's so simple. If a person gives you their life, accept that gift and be grateful for it. And if you don't need it, just apologize and refuse if you feel unworthy. But she didn't want to refuse anything because she loved her husband truly, deeply, and sincerely. And there was no one ever, who would be more dear to her than him, Diego. Dolores, are you overheating or something? You're so red, Margarita asked again. And these chairs are weird, it's scary to sit on them. Margarita put her hand on her suffering seat and shook it. Can you believe it? The wallet is right where it should be. Oh, Dolores, we didn't even get a chance to talk properly. So, how are you doing? I'm good, Diego. Well, my husband, he's wonderful. Kind, smart, patient. And really, Margarita, he's amazing. And I'm just a fool. Margarita, do you know how to get a ticket for the evening flight? I need to go home urgently. Very urgently. To my husband. I have to see him right away. I need to tell him so much. Well, a lot of things. Then call him, Margarita shrugged. Call him and tell him it's urgent. No, I can't call. I've already said enough nasty things to him over the phone. I need to see him, look into his eyes, and have him look into mine. Maybe then he'll believe me. You're strange, Dolores. Margarita shrugged her strong shoulders again. They'll sell you a ticket, but it'll cost you a fortune, so be prepared. That's okay, I'll make up for it. The main thing is to see Diego as soon as possible. All right, Margarita, thank you for everything, for your story, for your life, and for my realization. Dolores jumped up excitedly and unexpectedly hugged her friend. However, she couldn't quite close her arms around Margarita's back. No, you're definitely not normal. You didn't understand anything. Why are you thanking me? Margarita looked at Dolores with confusion and tentatively wrapped her arms around her shoulders. The next day, Dolores opened the door to her and Diego's apartment. Dolores? In the middle of the hallway stood the last person she wanted to see right now. She had forgotten that there was still one person before whom she would feel ashamed of everything she had said and done. Beatrice smiled awkwardly and apologetically as she looked at her daughter-in-law. You were supposed to come back in a few days. I'm sorry that I'm here. Diego asked me to pick up his things and leave the documents for you to sign regarding the apartment. He's busy, he took a big project, though, honestly, I think he just doesn't want to be here anymore. She coughed and continued more firmly. Diego asked me to find a team of repairmen. The wallpaper in the hallway needs to be replaced urgently. Honestly, I don't understand why this is necessary. Getting a divorce and thinking about wallpaper. I'm starting to worry about his sanity. But I found 2 workers, they're having a snack in your kitchen and will start working soon. Beatrice, dear, you don't have to. Dolores exclaimed. What do you mean, don't need to? Her mother-in-law asked. You don't need to take Diego's things, no signatures are needed on the documents, and leave the wallpaper as is. It's the best wallpaper in the world, I just love it. Beatrice wearily sank into a chair. I was afraid my son went crazy, but it looks like we have another mad woman here. Dolores, what's going on? What's going on, Beatrice, what's going on? I was a fool who almost ruined my life and Diego's life. But now, everything's fine. Beatrice, I love you very much and am grateful for everything. And I love Diego very much. And he's not going to get rid of me so easily. The woman looked at her in surprise and smiled uncertainly. It was clear that Beatrice hadn't completely let go of her suspicions about the widespread madness in her son's family. Well, I guess I'll go then, you figure it out. She stood up and moved toward the door but stopped and came back. So, I'll take the workers. They're not needed, right? Closing the door behind Beatrice and the two very surprised workers, Dolores grabbed the phone. Diego, hello, she said, pausing, and felt like a girl calling the man she was interested in for the first time. Hello, Dolores, he said. Diego, I need to meet with you. We'll see each other on the 30th at the court, he replied. No, I won't make it until the 30th. I need to see you now, immediately. Diego, darling, forgive me for everything. I'm such a fool, just impossible, and I need to explain everything to you, to tell you and ask you. Diego, please, don't divorce me, okay? There was some rustling on the phone, a bubbling sound, and his voice murmured something, then a thud was heard, and the connection was lost. A few seconds later, the phone rang again. Sorry, I dropped the phone. Where are we meeting? He said. Well, where else? At home, of course. At our place. I'll be waiting for you under your wallpaper, the one I just barely managed to save. Come over, okay? Half an hour later, Diego opened the door and, slowly, as if feeling the floor ahead of him with each step, afraid it might suddenly slip from beneath him, walked into the apartment. Dolores' heart skipped a beat in joy, then seemed to freeze for a few seconds, and then began to beat rapidly. Diego turned bright red, nervously losing the bouquet of flowers in his hands, and for some reason, it was clear that he was blushing from happiness.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.